I'm Patrick V, and on this episode of Reimagining Leadership, we're going to discuss the 7 behaviors that you need to successfully lead through a crisis. And I will tell you, I've been thinking about this for a while. While I've seen many examples of really great leadership through this, honestly, I've seen far too many at all levels of government, within organizations, and in the community that really lack the behaviors that are necessary for us to be able to navigate this. And I will tell you, at one point as I was thinking of the title for this, I almost wanted to put the title as Wanted: Leaders to Address Crisis. Step up is all you need to do to apply. There are behaviors here that we're going to talk about that I think will make all the difference, and they're based on both research and real-world experiences. So why don't we get into it? As I mentioned, I believe there are 7 behaviors that I think are most important. And again, we're going to talk about leading through crisis right now, but if you can lead through crisis, then you can certainly lead through better times. Again, I think that's what I'm seeing now is the void in effective leadership continues to widen, where we're seeing that individuals that maybe had positions of title with their authority really didn't have the equipment, so to speak, to be able to lead through this. And this is the problem that we're running into. So the first behavior that I want to recommend or that I want to talk about is simply around learning. Leaders are learners. If you are not learning and being curious about how do you improve your skills as a leader, then you will be left behind. And I think this environment, certainly we're seeing that now. I will often use, and have done so for over a decade now, a quote by a gentleman named Eric Hoffer. And he said, "In times of change, leaders inherit the earth, while the learned find themselves beautifully equipped to deal with a world that no longer exists." Learners inherit the earth in times of change. And we're always going through change. But I think more so even now, when I go in and do work, I know that there are many that think, especially when you get up into higher levels of leadership, that, well, I got all the way here. I get it. I know how to do this. And oftentimes they don't. They navigated a political situation to be able to get where they are, but they don't have the behaviors really that inspire, empower, and compel those people that report to them. And that's really what we're talking about here in terms of effective leadership is doing those 3 things. When you can inspire somebody to want to go where you're asking them to go, when you empower them to be able to say, I can do it and go where you want me to go, and then you compel them, they're able to say, I will go where you're asking me to go. There's an intrinsic motivation there, which doesn't rely on my title anymore or an extrinsic carrying a stick to get people to do what I'm wanting them to do out of fear. It's those 3 things, and it starts with learning, with always being out there to look at how do I improve my skill set. And that's key to this. So the next one that I will talk about in terms of a behavior is around congruence, walking the talk. That if we're making decisions in a crisis situation right now, what are we basing those off of? And in organizations, we probably have values and missions and visions. And to me, those are our true north. That when we can make decisions and at least back them up, saying that what the decision we're making is, or the decision that we're making right now is based off of this value. We're staying consistent with this. When we don't do that, we lose our own compass, and we lose those around us to be inspired, empowered, and compelled to follow where we need them to go. The next is around appreciation. This is about recognizing that we're all different personalities, different skill sets, that if we don't recognize the value in that of diversity within a group and drawing people in. As a leader, I can't have all the answers, nor should I be expected to. To me, this is about really being able to draw on the resources of those around me to appreciate who I have on this team. What are their strengths? And how do I draw them into coming up with the best solution? That's how this works. Not one person to do that or 2 people, but as many as I can from as many different various backgrounds that can help me to get as much information as I need to get on this. And the next one plays off of that somewhat, but it's around belongingness. And we know all the research in regards to inclusion and how important that is that we need people to feel as though they're part of the solution, that they're part of what is happening right now. And when we don't have that, people feel isolated. And this isn't part of this podcast, but there is so much research in regards to isolation and what that creates in terms of it has a negative impact on us all the way to mortality. And it's been shown that isolation in its most physical sense has a risk factor that's on par with either smoking or cardiovascular disease as it relates to mortality. So the importance of drawing people in is certainly valid. So next we talk about listening, that strong leaders are listeners as well. And they listen in a variety of ways to really try and be curious as to what other people have to say. They don't get defensive about it. They're open to exploring what are the other opinions or perspectives that I can draw in. And what that allows us to do when we're really listening as a leader is to diminish the negative impact of something we call confirmation bias. And what happens in confirmation bias is I look to the evidence that backs up what I believe in, and I discount all the other stuff that goes against that, even if it's valid. And it doesn't matter if we have an education level that's a GED or a PhD. We can all fall victim to being in this trap of confirmation bias. When we really listen, it allows us to diminish the impact that confirmation bias has on us because we're really being curious about what else is going on, and that's what we need out of leaders. The next is around empathy. And empathy involves really thinking about how do my decisions or what we're putting out there impact other people, and really to think about it from the standpoint of how does this affect a large business? How does this affect a small business? How does this affect a frontline employee or an owner? When we really can think about the long-term impacts of all the people that are involved in a situation, we need to be able to do that. And if some of you, as you're listening to this, might think there's nothing, this is all too soft, there's nothing here that is of any substance, I will tell you that the last behavior that I will talk about is around specifics, and that is about clear expectations and decisiveness. And again, if there is a trap that I see many leaders falling into, is that they're not providing enough in regards to clear expectations to allow people to know what is expected. There's far too many people that are saying, oh, guidance is coming, or we'll get this next week. That's not what people need. People need some type of transparency here when you're leading them to know where are we going. And the other part of this is around decisiveness. And that's the ability to act. While I might take all of the information around me into my decision and try and weight these things, when it comes to the end and the decision has to be made, then there are times where I'm going to have to make a difficult decision based on all the data that I can. I will not continue to sort of push this down the road, and I won't allow somebody else to take the fall for it. That I will be responsible for the decisions I make, but I will be decisive on this. And that builds so much trust in individuals when first they've been taken into account. I've demonstrated to them that I've tried to hear as many perspectives as I can on this, and here is my decision going forward. If we can't get consensus as a group, then my role as the leader of this is to make a final decision on this as best I can. Now, we're all human. There are times where I'm going to make the wrong decision, and as long as I'm responsible for that and I can own that, then again, from a standpoint of inspiring, empowering, and compelling others to follow my lead, I've built a level of trust there because they know that I'm going to be responsible for what I said. I think in this time that we're in right now, these 7 behaviors are so important. The first one, be a learner. Continually try and learn. That's the only way we get better because the world continues to change. And those that are learned, that are the ones that say, I don't need to learn any of this stuff, you're going to be left holding the bag. What you thought was leadership going forward will not work. The other 6 behaviors that I talk about are in a blueprint that I put together called cables. And the whole idea behind cables is to think of this as though each one of these behaviors builds a stronger, continuous cable when it's wrapped around itself. And when we do that, when we think of it in an analogy of a bridge, We're building stronger relationships through these cables that we develop, these behaviors. So the C in this model is congruence, or the blueprint. That's the C cable. The A cable is around appreciation. The B cable is around belongingness and being for others. The L cable here is around listening. The E cable is around empathy. And the S cable is around specifics, which is about clear expectations and being decisive. That is about reimagining what effective leadership is going to look like going forward. We are finding a better way. And I hope you will challenge either yourself or someone around you to identify and develop these behaviors that will not only get us through a crisis, but certainly will be much more beneficial when we're not in a crisis as well, in terms of helping us to grow even better. I hope you found this episode helpful. If you know somebody you think would find this valuable, I'd ask that you forward it on to them. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please go and subscribe to the podcast. And it would mean the world to me if you would leave a rating or a comment as it relates to reimagining leadership. And until our next episode, I hope you're able to go out there and rise above your best.